Hi, friends. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm really glad to see you. Hopefully, you guys are going to be able to sign in. I do see a couple of you who have already signed in, but let me make sure that everything is connected properly. Just setting things up. I'm going to say, hi, friends. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Okay. Looks like we're doing okay. I'm going to let you guys sign in a little bit before we get started. And before I jump in, I had to move tonight's live chat just a little bit to 7:30, which I'm not used to doing that on a Friday, but I had to do that just because of scheduling conflicts in my day today. So I do see you guys trickling over. I see you signing in. It's good to see you. Good to see you, Fairy Girl. I'm going to acknowledge you guys as you sign in. Fairy Girl, it's good to see you with the dabs. Welcome tonight. AMB, good to see you. Welcome as well. Sun and Sunflowers, it's good to see you. Fifi LaFleur, hello. I hope you're doing well. I always love your screen photo. It's the cutest thing. It reminds me of a neighbor that my mom raised me around, and she had the cutest little puppy. Sun Farrar, good to see you. Welcome tonight. Keith B, it's good to see you. Welcome back. And also MS, so good to see you, and thank you for that. That's so awesome. I just hate when I have to make you guys push the time back, you know what I mean? But I'm so glad to see you. Mark Lee, it's good to see you tonight. Welcome. And Pulsar, hello and welcome. Yeah, I was moved to 7:30 tonight instead of 6:50. Yeah, I hate when my schedule forces me to do that. Ellie Wynn, it's good to see you. Welcome. Axe to Edge, it's good to see you. I hope that you are doing all right. We have a new one tonight. Scorpio Bird, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Welcome to the channel. Hopefully tonight will be a motivator for you, and you'll say, you know what, I think I'm going to stick around, especially if you haven't been following the live chat. So it's good to see you. Actually Jovial, hello and welcome. Good to see you. I also see Doran Beckford, hello and welcome. It's good to see you tonight. And Nancy R, yes, hello, good to see you. Welcome back tonight. Okay. Oh, Live Life, I'm going to welcome you as well. Hello and welcome. It's good to see you tonight. Let's go ahead and jump in. Okay. I wanted to just give you guys some time to settle in and trickle over and get onto the channel before I started talking. So most of you are here already. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I don't have any issues on my end. So yeah, it is. Well, Ellie, maybe depending on what time zone you're in. But for Eastern time, 7:30 on a Friday is a little bit late for me. But anyway, it's good to see you. Christina Smith, it's good to see you. Welcome back. And M&L Odell, I'm not going to leave you out of that. Welcome. Good to see you tonight. This conversation, guys, what did you think when I put on the thumbnail? What was the thumbnail again? Let me look this up. Hold on. I think I put on there relationship fools. Did I put that on there? What did you guys think I was going to be talking about tonight? I just want to know. Yeah, it's the psychology of relationship fools. Isn't that derogatory? It's kind of dehumanizing, and I don't mean it that way. So let me put that out there. I'm not trying to be critical or demeaning or condescending, but let me just throw this out here that before psychology got to a place where we started categorizing mental health disorders, we started giving things specific names, and we also started making things clinical rather than, just something that we call a person. The word fool kind of dropped out of the awareness of most people. But let me be honest with you, there's a difference between foolish behavior and a foolish person. And we're going to be talking about them because most likely you have dealt with a foolish person in your life. And maybe you've dealt with a foolish person since childhood, which was mom and dad. And I'm going to define what that means and really clarify with as much research and objectivity as I can, what the fool actually is. I think you're going to walk away feeling like, wow, I do know these people. And maybe that's the person that I'm dealing with right now. And I had no idea, Philosophy, existentialism, and theology. Those are three areas of study that utilizes the term fool to describe somebody who has really actions that are contrary to their self-interest, right? So they do things that are not going to benefit them in the long run. It's actions that are contrary to self-interest. They don't desire or intend to be foolish, but they are. And in every foolish behavior that they engage in or they display, they just get further and further and further behind because they don't have the capacity. And I want to ask you guys this a little bit later, but I'm going to ask you, what do you think of this? They don't have the capacity to avoid foolish behaviors. They do really dumb things, if you will. They do very immature things. And they do things that's not only going to go against their self-interest, but it may go against another person's safety, self-interest, desires, needs, and wants. And they don't care. Really, when you think of a foolish person, you want to process them as being impaired. They are impaired. They are rooted in impaired judgment. Rooted in impaired judgment. They don't have the ability to have wise judgment. You know, a person who is not foolish in relationship to other people, mom, dad, siblings, extended family members, boss, coworker, neighbors, whatever relationship dynamic it is, and you're dealing with a very foolish person, you know, you want to consider it this way, that they don't have attention to detail like they should. They don't have an awareness that allows them to look at who they are in relation to other people. So they don't have self-awareness and they don't have control because they tend to be very impulsive and they tend to be rather quick to action. There's a Russian saying, if you will, or a Russian phrase, and it says, fools rush in. I saw this at a museum once. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. What that means is fools are impulsive. They don't decide very well on things. They tend to be very wavering in how they engage in relationships, the decisions that they make, right? The people and relationships that they embrace. They're very wayward and they're wavering. They don't know how to stay the course, right? So where angels fear to tread, right? Meaning, I'm not going to go that way because that way spells danger for me. The foolish individual is saying, let's go, let's go, let's get in there. Let's see how this is going to be. They don't scare me. Let's just go, right? So the Russian phrase basically says that a foolish person in a relationship, they're impulsive, they're quick, they tend to act before they think. They don't process, they don't think it through, they don't pump the brakes. They just do. And that's what gets them in trouble. Interestingly, for those who are, aware of the Christian Bible, there is also a proverb. And it talks about fools, not just a Russian saying, but there's also a proverb. And the proverb says, the wise are cautious. They are cautious and they avoid danger. They avoid danger. And sadly, fools plunge ahead. And they have this reckless character. They plunge ahead. They don't know how to just kind of pause and calm down a little bit. And that's what makes them foolish, because they take your heart, your mind, your soul through a series of challenges. And it's going to be really hard for you to feel grounded, safe, cared for, and protected in that relationship, whatever that relationship is. Research suggests that it could be any relationship that you're in, but more specifically, the damage comes when you are in a relationship with someone and you're in a commitment and that person is foolish, or you're in a parent-child dynamic and you're the adult child and that dynamic is foolish because mom is a fool, dad is a foolish person. and they're doing things, you're not being dehumanizing, you're not being derogatory. You're pointing out what tends to be a characterological disorder or a character disorder. It's a character pathology. You may, put under the heading of a foolish person, you may put a narcissist. You could probably put a sociopath, a psychopath under there, right? Maybe somebody who is quick to action, doesn't have the capability of pausing. We are not, and I want to make this very clear, that we are not calling names. We're not being derogatory, and we're certainly not trying to dehumanize the person. We're not talking about an intellectual disability. We're not talking about somebody who is on the autism spectrum. We're also not talking about somebody who doesn't seem to have the ability to think. We're talking about a person who has the ability to think, has the ability to process what is right and what is wrong, has the ability to recognize the error of their ways, but they choose not to. We're talking about a fully functional human being who has a character pathology or a problem that makes it hard for them to make wise decisions. Foolish action is defined as behavior that is, I'm going to put it this way, behavior that has a high likelihood of backfiring. I'll put that out there first. Foolish behavior is a behavior that has a high likelihood of backfiring, right? Sometimes with disastrous consequences. Disastrous consequences. It really is a failure to attend to risks. It's a failure to attend to risks, right? And especially risks that are clearly obvious to other people. That tends to be the agreed upon definition from an existential, a philosophical, even a theological perspective. Maybe not so much clinical, but it definitely is theological, philosophical, and existential. Foolish behavior, a foolish action, or an action exhibited by a foolish person, entails behavior that has a high likelihood of backfiring. I'm repeating it again because it tends to be, I think, the clearest part of this whole conversation tonight. So I'm repeating it again. It's a behavior that has a high likelihood of backfiring, often with disastrous consequences. Disastrous. Think about it. A foolish person is a person who goes ahead without any guidance, without any wisdom, without any pullback, without pumping the brakes, without getting consultation, without talking to other people, without considering the pros and the cons. This is a person who, you might as well look at it this way, covers their eyes, right? And just walks into the street. That's really what a foolish person is. I'm going to cover my eyes and I'm going to walk through the street and just hope and pray and cross my fingers that I don't get hit by a car and killed. But I'm going to cover my eyes and I'm going to press forward across that busy highway and hope to God I don't get hit. And that is the definition of a foolish individual. So those disastrous consequences are there, but they kind of, there's this failure to attend to the risks of their decision. And they don't have the ability to attend to the risks that are very clear to everybody else. In the example that I just gave you of somebody closing their eyes and going across a busy highway, hoping that they don't get ran over, somebody who, isn't foolish in their character and their behavior, more than likely, you're going to stand back and say, why would you do that? Why cover your eyes and go across that busy highway knowing that the chances of you getting hit and killed are really high, and you're probably standing on the outskirts of that person thinking, what a dumb thing to do. Why are you doing that? You know that the consequences are there and they are big and they are in bold letters and there's no way that you can't see them, but you choose to go forward anyway. And so some people are just kind of, what's the word? They're kind of conditioned sometimes to engage in foolish behaviors. They are kind of molded to engage in sometimes very foolish behaviors, and they don't know how to back themselves out of position of foolishness that they are in. And that is a scary reality. I wouldn't want to be in a car with a foolish person who doesn't seem to tend to the dangers on the road, who tend to drive with forethought and wisdom and control and self-control. I wouldn't want to get in a car with you. Years ago, I remember one of my friends, one of my colleagues, we were very, very close, and he and I ran a program together. We were in a residential treatment facility for kids who had really, 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 really difficult lives. And I'm talking children who were homeless, children who were sexually abused multiple times, kids who have had, back to back traumas. And so we kind of only had each other to rely on. So we became very close. But here's what scared and terrified the heck out of me at the time. And this was over 10 years ago. I remember we decided to accept a person into the program that we were both running, and the family had broken down on the side of the road. Because this residential treatment facility was in the middle of nowhere, and this was the last client of the day for the both of us, we called the family and we said, you know what, it's okay. We're going to come to you. And, we will sit on the side of the road with you if we need to, but let's get this child into residential treatment because it's what's needed. And so the parent was like, thank you so much, because we drove from West Virginia, and that's 3.5 hours from here. And so, of course, we hopped in the car. Where I went wrong, guys, okay, is I let him drive. That was a foolish decision. Because when I got into that passenger side, I buckled my seatbelt, and boy, was I in for a ride. This colleague of mine, he somehow hugged the right side of the road a lot. So we're hugging the right side of all the roads we're driving down. So we were in the mountains. We had to go through the mountains to get to this family. And there is absolutely no guardrail. He's just like so close to the edge. I could feel my inner system dipping and getting dizzy. I'm like, oh my God. His speed was absolutely unbelievable. He had to be doing 85, 100 on some of those bends. It was dark. Okay. The only lights in this rural country area that we have were car lights, and as we're turning some of the bends, his car lights was showing up deers, we saw a fox on the side of the road. And I'm like, you need to slow down, because if we hit the wrong thing or hit an animal, we're going to go over this mountain here because there's no guard rails. He's like, oh, it's okay. Just relax, Tam. Just relax. Everything is fine. And, I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, this will never happen to me again. If I get out of this and I breathe and I'm alive and I understand who I am at the end of this trip, I will never do this again, And so foolish behavior makes you feel that way, right? Foolish behavior makes you feel like you need to hold on, for dear life, that I can't let go of the railing. I can't let go of the car door. I can't take my seatbelt off. I'll cling on to this because I am terrified of the next action that you are going to make or take, right? The next movement that you're going to make, the next behavior that you're going to decide on, because there is no processing of information to make you feel safe, right? The way that I think he should have been processing this is, it is dark. We're doing something that we never do, which is meet a family on the side of the road because they broke down in a rural area. It is dark out here. There's wild animals out here, probably a few grizzly bears. There's a place where, you can get gas and you can pull over, but that's about so many miles down the road. So if we get a flat tire, we're going to be in trouble. If we wreck into something, we're going to be in trouble. Our cell phone signals were not working in that area. The list goes on. You think he thought about all those things, guys? Nope. No, I was in the passenger side, though, thinking of all the many wrecks that we could have ended up in. But, great clinician, great person, lovable personality, had a great family life. Wife was sweet and adorable. 5 kids that he had were cute and adorable. But underneath all of that stuff was a person who made foolish decisions. And it really was a behavior. Driving like that in the middle of nowhere in pitch darkness, at 7:30 p.m. at night when it's dark in the middle of winter, it's a behavior that had the likelihood of backfiring on us. and having disastrous consequences. And he didn't see it. He didn't want to see it. He couldn't see it. So think of that. Like, that's the definition of a foolish person. And you're just hanging on for dear life with them. Imagine having a situation where, your mom or your father, your mother or your father is foolish. All of their behaviors tend to lead you into danger. They tend to lead you backwards. There's no wisdom in telling you how to think or process things. Don't you love the idolized vision that most of us have of mothers? Mothers are supposed to be wise and loving and sensitive and guiding. They're supposed to take our hand and guide us. They're supposed to take our hand and lead us, not judge us, but lead us. They're supposed to say, you know what? Come this way, honey. We're going to go this way together. I'm walking with you. No matter what you do, I'm going to make sure that you're going to be okay. So take my hand. Let's go this way. Let's not do that. Let's go this way. Here's what's going to happen if you go over there. Let's go this way. Right? That's wisdom. That's objectivity. That's self-control. That's processing. But when you are dealing with a foolish character, that doesn't happen. That does not happen at all. And so that's what makes it so scary. Research in psychology suggests that foolish behavior is really an inability to self-monitor. It's an inability to, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-reflect. It's an inability to say, I did A, B, and C, and that was wrong. And I know I don't need to do it again. Let me turn my heat down, guys. I'm roasting. Hold on, give me 1 second. Why do I let this happen, guys? Every single live chat. Okay. So where was I? Self-reflecting, right? A foolish person doesn't have the ability and the capability to self-reflect, right? There's no objective goals with a foolish person. They tend to be reckless. There's a kind of willingness. It's a willingness and openness to challenge the norms, which I'm often playing that role, but it doesn't mean that I'm a foolish person. And let me clarify, it doesn't mean that you are either. It's just there are certain situations where you do have to challenge certain norms, and that's a good thing. But with a foolish person, they have a willingness to challenge the norms, even when challenging the norms means you're going to lose something. Watch those police body camera videos on YouTube, and you will see this in action almost every other video. They're always saying, I'm pregnant, don't touch me, or these cuffs are too tight, don't touch me. They come up with all kind of stuff, or they outright blame the officer for something that didn't happen, foolishly believing that their word is going to top everything. It just doesn't make any sense. There's a body camera. We can play it back, we can rewind it, and we can see what's really going on here. So why lie, right? Why tilt the story? Why be a problem? Why be a problem in the first place? Just give the officer your license, registration, and insurance and move on with life. But no, they want to challenge and they want to scream, I know my rights, when they really don't. There's always something going on, when you watch those police body cam videos. And if you're anything like me, when you're watching them, I just watch them and cringe. It's like, this doesn't have to be. Why are you making this an issue? Because there is really a willingness to challenge norms, social rules. And what are the social rules and the norms when it comes to police officers? You abide by the rules. I don't care what you think. You're not to argue an officer on the side of the road. You're not to threaten them. You're not to be touching things down in your car and on your floor because they don't know what you're reaching for. You're not to refuse to give them the actual license. You need to, sometimes you'll see on those videos, a person will say, well, I'm not going to give you my actual license. I'm going to give you a copy of it, because you're not supposed to get, and it's like, oh, geez, just shut up, be quiet and go along. But a foolish person often engages in foolish behaviors, and they engage in the behaviors with disastrous consequences when everybody else knows that it's obviously one way and one way only. Why are you trying to make this an issue, right? And so there's this willingness to challenge the rules of society, to challenge the smooth way that things are to go. There's almost like an inability to be humble. There's an inability to be modest. There's an inability to be self-aware and to look at oneself and say, I'm making this a bigger issue than it needs to be. There's absolutely no benefit. You ready for this? There's absolutely no benefit in arguing with a fool, right? Because you're going to find out that they waver. You're going to find out that they're undecided in a lot of things, which makes them waver. And you're also going to find out that they are going to engage in what's called circular reasoning and circular arguing. What is circular reasoning? Reasoning that takes you around and around and around again, and there's never an end. You know, I've dealt with clients like that in the past, and foolish clients who just want an argument. You know, when I worked in a juvenile delinquency center, I had adolescent boys. I was working with all boys at the time, and one of the boys in the unit said, "Hey, Miss Tamara, could you do some therapy with me today?" I says, yeah. You have time in the next 15 or so minutes? And he's like, "Yeah, I do." I said, "Okay, I'll be back in 15 minutes. I went back to his cell or his room that they had him locked in, and I sat down and I engaged in conversation with him. And he says, "I don't understand why my parents are so against me smoking weed and doing meth and smoking crack." He says, "My great grandfather was a drug addict and his life was great because he was never in reality." And so we're having this conversation. And so I explained to him that drugs have an impact on your brain, whether or not they're on the street, whether or not they're from a pharmacy. The street drugs are even worse because you don't know what the heck is in them. At least if you go to a pharmacy, you can have some safety or some peace of mind knowing that it's not a street drug, but there's still chemicals in there. And so my argument with him was, don't do drugs, period. If you can steer clear of drugs, your life is going to be so much better. And you don't have to deal with addiction. And so his argument with me, however, was a foolish one, because if I were to say marijuana and meth can do a number on your brain, no, they can't. Because I found out that, and then he would quote a bunch of different sources that I could never find, that I could never connect the dots to. And then I would go back and say, well, you know, think about alcohol. Think about the effects of alcohol in your brain. Your brain is not fully developed until 26, you know. And he would say, that's not true because I found this on Google. And so then he would try to make a point there. And I remember saying to him, you may not want to go to Wikipedia. You may want to go to a reputable website to get your information. Why is that? Because a lot of people use Wikipedia. In fact, Wikipedia, and it's like the whole conversation was just a circular argument. There was never going to be a resolution to the situation whatsoever. None, nada. It was not there. Why? Because a foolish individual has an inability to reflect, self-reflect. They don't want to hear what you have to say. They don't want to hear your objectivity. They are subjective, and they have a specific way that they want to engage in their world, you know, and there's no benefit in the end to you to engage them in conversation. It is a character disorder, a character pathology. It's like they are trapped in their own jail, and trapped in their own jail, a world that they have created on their own. Can you imagine that? Having a sibling like this, a brother, a sister, a nephew, a niece, a mom, a dad, it's really hard because they have kind of built these walls in the world that says, this is the way that I conceptualize everything. And I don't really care. I don't really care what you think, because I think I'm pretty interesting. And it's a scary reality, you know? So in tonight's live chat, I see you guys chatting it up over there. So I want to kind of get into some of your comments. Give me 1 second, guys. Excuse me. My goal is to wrap up by 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, if not 8:25. So let me give you a little bit before I go to the chat box. Yeah. I see Axe to Edge here. I'm going to pull your comment out. Axe to Edge says, oh gosh, that client is exhausting me just hearing about him. Why ask for a few minutes of therapy to ventilate your foolishness? Yes, I'm gonna star your comments. Yes, yes, and yes. Well, axe to edge, you have to consider that a foolish person, just about all of their behavior is foolish, right? So you're right when you say, why ask for therapy? Why ask for a few minutes of therapy to ventilate your foolishness? Yeah, because ready for this? To him, it's not foolish. To him, I'm standing my ground. I'm making a point. I'm teaching my therapist. I'm being difficult. I'm challenging norms. I'm changing how she sees things. That is so frustrating, right? And so you're right, axe to edge. You're right. I agree with you on that. But this is just who he is. And a foolish person, nothing they do makes sense, typically. Because again, it's a behavior that has a high likelihood of backfiring with disastrous consequences. Why would you pull me into a room to argue with me over the effects of drugs on the brain so that I can type up your information into my clinical system, create a note on you, share it with the psychiatrist, right? And you get locked up even longer because now we see that you're not ready to be discharged. Why aren't you ready to be discharged? Because you are showing that when you get out, you're going to do a high number, most likely you're going to do a great number of drugs. You're probably going to be another detriment to society. He was actually in the treatment facility, the legal treatment facility, for attempted murder, for driving under the influence, and resisting arrest. So in the program, you would think that he wouldn't want to argue with the therapist and try to make this grand argument about drugs because he had a DUI. That's the wrong thing to do. So again, there's a lack of control. There's no attention to detail and wisdom. Actions go against his self-interest. His self-interest was, I need to get out of this place. And I'm not going to call the therapist into my room so she can document this conversation. And it's on my medical record. And the psychiatrist and my therapist and the caseworker is going to look at this and say, you're not ready to leave. He didn't have that ability to process that. His foolishness was rooted in impaired judgment. His judgment was sorely impaired. And so that's a fool. It's so hard, isn't it, to digest the actions of a fool? Because the reality is this, that you're going to do, most of us, we're going to do what it takes to protect our self-interest. And that means sometimes zipping it, not saying anything. But he didn't have that capability. Let me go into common behaviors, guys. I'm going to go into common behaviors so that we'll be a little bit ahead. And then I'm going to engage you in the chat box. And then I'm going to tell you how to manage these kind of people, because tomorrow's live chat is going to be another interesting conversation about some of these individuals. So you're going to want to see me tomorrow or come visit me tomorrow. But let me give you the common behaviors of these individuals before I go to the chat box. Common behaviors with foolish people. This is what research in psychology on foolish behavior, on sociopaths, narcissists, dark empaths. Here's what it says, that foolish people embrace naivety. They don't want to know the truth. They just want to live in this boxed reality that they have created. And so they embrace naivety. If I'm naive, ignorance is bliss. So naivety means I'm happy. I don't have to adjust. I don't have to learn things. I don't have to change. I don't have to feel guilt. I don't have to feel like I'm behind in life. I'm going to embrace this naivety that everything is okay. While the reality of my situation is, I've got legal charges, I've got warrants, I'm really struggling in life. Nobody trusts me anymore. I'm not liked. I need therapy. The list goes on. They don't have that ability to self-reflect, right? So they have this naivety that's unwavering. And in a sense, they don't have the capacity to say, I'm being naive right now. I'm not going to just walk up to that guy over there or that girl over there and say, can I take you out for dinner? And the next thing you know, you guys are engaged and it's only been a day of knowing each other. I had a client that did that once. I think she was on the bipolar spectrum. I think she had bipolar disorder that was undiagnosed. She was going through a manic episode. And what was scary about her is she was working at Hooters, for those of you who know what that is, and brought some guy home that was old enough to be her grandfather. And, she just automatically the next day, came to therapy, and she says, "Hey, Tamara, we're going to get married." She's like, "We're in love. We're getting married." And I just remember thinking, "Oh my God, how can I stop you?" And then I had to rewire my own thinking, because I can't stop her. This is who she is. This is what she has decided to do. The only thing I can do is try to care for her through it and walk her through this and hope that she changes her mind and makes a better decision for herself. But the idea was naivety. The naivety is this, that he loves me and only me, even though I met him at Hooters and he's old enough to be my grandfather. He was like 70 something. I'm not going to do this. Naivety for her was, let's go ahead. Let's do this. What's pausing everything? What's stopping? What do I need to stop and talk about or do or consider? So they also tend to have, according to research, a little bit of malice and kind of like this unhinged anger. Sometimes foolish people are angry. Why? Because they think everybody else around them are fools, when the reality is, no, they're not. You are the problem. They are the biggest problem in their own world, and yet they don't see it that way. They see it as, you're a fool, you're the problem, you're the issue, you need to change, I'm fine. And that's the prison that they have built around themselves. That idea that I am A-okay, it's you. And so they never learn how to self-reflect, because they don't see themselves as the problem in the first place. We can put a narcissist under the terminology of a fool. We can also put a sociopath under that terminology of a fool. Sometimes they are too arrogant, too self-assured, too complacent to recognize that they are behaving foolishly. They don't seem to understand that. You may also have a fool or a foolish person in your life who has no guilt and remorse. And I honestly think that if you're dealing with, this is my personal and professional assessment of all of this, that if you are dealing with a foolish person and you recognize that their foolish actions can lead to disastrous consequences, and there's danger here, there's failure to attend to the reality of the situation, I honestly think that you should just kind of lock them up and throw the key away, because having no guilt and remorse says that I don't have the internal workings at all to go from here to there, from A to B. I don't process, I don't think, I don't do anything but what my heart and my desires want me to do. And that's not a good thing always. And so, these kind of individuals, if they don't have guilt or remorse, to me, that makes them more dangerous, because they're never going to feel sorry for what they've done. They're never going to have any self-awareness of how they've affected somebody else's life. It's not there. There's also little that can trigger them. So they go from 0 to 100. They don't like to feel like a foolish person. They don't like to be deceived. They don't like to be the last to know. And yet they engage in the behaviors that are foolish. It's like a dichotomy. You are the foolish individual. You're the one acting this way. And yet you don't want to be deceived. You don't want to be left behind. You don't want to be the last to find something out. You don't want to be the one that is on the losing end of things. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? But some research does highlight that they tend to walk around with this chip on their shoulder, almost paranoid. They don't want to be the one that is the last one standing. It's interesting. But every decision that they make is a foolish one. So they're going to be the last man standing anyway. So, but a lot of times they tend to be rather confused. They are reckless and impulsive. They're reckless and impulsive. That's what's scary about a fool. My former coworker so many years ago, speeding around those dark bins like that, reckless. What showed me that he was speeding too fast is when we dropped down into like a sinkhole, and the car just shook. And I'm thinking, this is unbelievable. You need to slow down. So, but they're reckless and impulsive, right? They're also convinced that they're right in just about everything. I'm right in politics. I'm right when it comes to moral matters. I'm ethical. That means I'm right. I'm right about what you've done to me. I'm right about that. I'm right about that. I'm right about that. They're right about everything. They're convinced that their way of seeing the world through their lens is the right way to see things. They are truly deep into self-deception. Self-deception is a big issue with them. They have to deceive themselves in order to carry out the actions that are foolish that they engage in. Isn't that scary? And they also tend to be gullible. They just walk around like life is wonderful, or they walk around believing that nothing's going to happen to them, or they walk around and harm you and do things to you that makes you feel depressed and overwhelmed. They trap you in certain things. They gossip in the family. They pit one person against the other. They use you for everything you're worth. And do you think that those behaviors are going to lead to self-awareness or apologies or a change in their character? It is not. They really and honestly do believe. They do believe that everything they do is the right thing. There's kind of like this bias that they carry around, that they are not engaging in foolish actions and behaviors when they're doing it every day that they wake up. That's the scary part. So, okay, I'm going to go to the chat box, guys. Christina Smith says, I think I welcomed you already. It's good to see you. Christina Smith says, they have serious character flaws. They do. They do. And the character flaw could be the result of narcissism. It could be the result of sociopathy. Whatever the case, it's the result of something that is the matter with them or wrong. Personality disorder. Maybe they just process things a little slower. Maybe they were raised in a family that kind of sheltered them. Maybe you're dealing with a narcissist. Did I say that already? I feel like I said that already. Or maybe you're just dealing with a person, who tends to just see the world in a different way. And so everything they do is a foolish behavior because they never reflect on what's happening. They just act and they push forward. Laura Fitt, good to see you. Hello, welcome back tonight. Keith B says, that sounds like some of my mom's side of the family. Yeah. Yep. Christina Smith says, people who operate in impulsivity, they are scatterbrained people. Sometimes they are. And they're scattered all over the place. They really are. And that's a difficult piece of the puzzle there. Juby Joe, it's good to see you. Yes, much love to you as well. It's good to see you tonight. Nice. Axe to Edge. I'm going to read this. Axe to Edge says, to be honest, concerning the thumbnail title, I've read, listened, heard that even scientists have said that in the past few years that people are becoming more foolish. I'm not sure of the context. Yeah, absolutely. That's okay. No, I'm glad you brought it up. It's good to know that there are some scientists who are also saying the same thing, because I think a lot of people believe that the word is a derogatory, dehumanizing one, when the reality is, no, it's describing a set of behaviors that doesn't necessarily have a place in the diagnostic manual of mental disorders. It doesn't have a place in there. So what do we do about those people who do really foolish things and they hurt other people, and there's a failure to attend to possible risks, and yet they don't have a diagnosis? We got to be able to categorize those people. And so full tends to be the way that we go. Yeah. Donna Lee says the book of Proverbs describes the fool well. Yes, I very much agree. Very much agree. Yep. Charlotte Jocelyn, hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight. Welcome to the channel. Charlotte says, check out the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah, I did a live chat on that a couple of months ago. So yes, I agree. Check into that. I may post that in the comment section once we sign off tonight. Scorpio Bird says, I finally learned after 40 years with my mom that she's emotionally dangerous for me. Lately, I had no kind of emotionally cut her off. I'm sorry. I had to emotionally cut her off and stop being foolish and being emotionally vulnerable with her. Well, I'm not sure I would call that foolish. Maybe you're trying your very best to give her a chance. You know, a foolish behavior is, I'm going to do this and I'm going to continue to do it and continue to do it because I believe in it. And I'm not going to reflect. The fact that you are reflecting and you've drawn a conclusion says that you are far beyond the foolish behavior title. So I hope that gives you some peace of mind. I really and honestly do believe that you were just trying to make something work, not necessarily being a fool. Thank you, actually, Jovial. I appreciate you for that. Thank you. All right, we're going to keep moving. Space Monk Tarot, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. It's good to see you. I'm going to just post your comment up there so people can see it. Ellie Wynn, you're so cute. I'm going to put Ellie Wynn up here. She says, okay, I won't call them names for now. Totally get it. I totally get it. The Good Glow, thank you so much for that kind comment. I really appreciate you. Hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. It's so good to see you today. Okay, we're going to keep moving. Give it a think. Hello and welcome. It's good to see you back. Give it a think says, being parentified or parented, by two narcissistic parents, I was conditioned to behave like a fool. And I did. Woo. Well, give it a think. That's some honesty. I'm sure a lot of people don't want to hold, but it's wonderful that you can self-reflect like that. You know, that says a lot about you, that you can say, I've engaged in some foolish behavior and I know it. The good part about this is the self-awareness. And then guess what? The action to change it, which I think is a big, big thing. Sylvie, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. I hope all is well with you as well. Yesterday was a little bit of a rough day for me. Very tired, very drained today. So hopefully you're getting the same energy that I give every other live chat. I had an endoscopy yesterday. Do you guys know what that is? And I'll share this with you just to kind of make you laugh a little bit. They gave me anesthesia for the endoscopy because I've been in so much pain for the past few months. But I remember them putting this green mouth guard in my mouth. And let me tell you, I was out like that. That green mouthpiece is to kind of like hold your mouth open so they can take a camera down your esophagus and that. And I literally, the anesthesiologist was like, you're not going to feel this pain because it's going to go in your IV. And we'll see you on the other side. And before I could comprehend what he was saying to me, I was out like a light. I was out, guys. And then I woke up and I remembered nada about the experience. Nothing. I remember that green mouth thing. That's it, you know? And so today I literally was planted face down. I was so tired. Have you guys ever had anesthesia? Has it worn off in like a day or two? Because I still feel so exhausted. So hopefully you're getting the same amount of energy from me that you usually get. I truly hope so, because I am exhausted. Christina Smith says they refuse to operate in wisdom and thoughtfulness. 100%. I very much agree with that. Well said. Regina Myers, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. All right, I'm going to keep scrolling because I am pretty far behind. Netter, Giordano. I know I messed that up. It doesn't feel right. Hello, forgive me. Hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. I agree with that. People are too careless. Yep. Millie Mel, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Welcome to the channel. And thank you so much for that support. I truly appreciate you. Thank you. That's so, so sweet. We have a new statistic that we have obtained. And I thought it was really cool. I don't think I have it pulled up, but as of last weekend, we hit 10.5 million views as a channel that goes live every single Friday and Saturday. And I thought that was so cool. Sometimes YouTube will send creators emails that highlights their milestones. And so they were like, this is amazing. So 10.5 million views. Can you believe that? That's a lot. So you guys are awesome. You're wonderful. And I'm so grateful for that. And I just think it's the content, number one, but number two, which to me is the bigger piece of this whole puzzle, is it's just your genuinity, your engagement, your community, all of that. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to figure out with YouTube, how do you access viewer posts where you don't need me to post something on my channel in the community center so that you can start conversations or share epiphanies or whatever you want to do. I'm going to allow that, but I'm not quite sure why it's not showing up for you guys. So I'm going to figure that out. So bear with me, bear with me. Daughter of God, hello and welcome. Good to see you back tonight. Daughter of God says it's kind of scary because you never really know people. I've been relationship traumatized. Absolutely. You don't really know people. And a lot of times we kind of judge people based on what they give us, right? The exterior, the display of character, their words, their actions. We tend to zone in on those so much that we miss what could really be going on. And to me, there's only two ways that you can really find that out, you know, in a way that's going to protect you. One, you kind of have to study the human mind. You have to study human behavior. And you can only do that but so far. If you're a psychologist, if you're a therapist, if you're a mental health provider, and you have truly submerged yourself in understanding how the mind works, how personality works, how behavior works, you know, why certain people behave and function and tick as they do. That's wonderful. Then you can kind of learn who they are. You have to have that clinical experience as well. So sitting in front of that person, observing that person, hearing how they think, viewing how they behave, looking at their nuances, if you will. And the second way is having spiritual insight. To me, those are the only two ways that you're really going to learn who people are, is spiritual insight and getting that really close encounter with how other people think. And I think that's why half the world remains deceived by foolish people, because we take for granted that these are human beings that have a way of thinking, a way of behaving, a way of functioning in the world. Maybe they're traumatized. Maybe they're evil. Maybe they're dark. What is their soul? Maybe their soul is dark. We don't think those things because we are so pulled in by the smile they give us socially, the things they say socially, some of their interests that may match yours, some of the very charming demeanor that people can share with you. It's really hard to see what they're really about. So, daughter of God, I very much agree with you. Very much agree with you that you never really know people, and it's really hard to figure out who you're dealing with. Yeah. Nancy R says, not my mother. Yeah. Yeah. Ellie Wynn says the same thing. MS says, my parents used to drive this way. It would terrify me. My bros drive same way. Yes, mine does too. I told one bro not to make his fancy new car his coffin. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. You had to just tell him the truth, right, MS? He gave me the side eye, not understanding my remark. Well, he probably gave you a side eye believing that he doesn't drive recklessly. You drive recklessly, my friend. I wouldn't have to tell you if you didn't drive recklessly. Space Monk Tarot says, is this a sign that I'm too foolish? How do you know if you've been a foolish person? Well, that's a very good question. And I'm not sure I have the readily available answer for that. What I will do, though, is I'll share my personal view of that. I don't know what the research says. I truly think that if you are making foolish decisions, you're probably going to end up in a certain pattern of behavior in your life. If you continue to get into negative relationships, or if you continue to stay in dangerous relationships and there are disastrous consequences as a result, then that's when I think it is humble and modest and wise to pause and say, what the heck am I doing here? What am I doing that's wrong, if anything? So an example of that could be somebody who has been in one relationship where there's domestic violence. They get into another relationship where there's domestic violence. They get into another relationship where there's domestic violence, and they continue doing it over and over. We can't necessarily say that that is foolish behavior. It could just be traumatized, right? I'm traumatized and I continue to seek out the same level of water or the same zone or the same person. But in some cases, we can look at it as foolish behavior. You keep getting into the same relationships because you're falling for the same thing. You're not putting up boundaries. You're not learning from the consequences of the last situation, and you're not dedicating yourself to change and steer away from these kind of things. That to me is foolish behavior. So it's, in a sense, right? It's kind of doing the same thing and expecting a different result. I hear people say that all the time, and I used to say, you don't know what you're talking about. But I really do believe that's part of it. You keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And to me, that is foolish behavior. It's foolish behavior. And foolish behavior is fighting with authority, challenging norms when they shouldn't be challenged. Yes, you can challenge the norms when you're down the street at a protest. Yes, you can challenge the norms if you're at work and something is unfair. No, you shouldn't challenge the norms if the police are asking you for your license and registration because you got pulled over speeding in a school zone. So, like, in a sense, you can kind of weigh yourself. You can weigh Space Monk Tarot, what's wise, what's unwise. And to me, people who are wise or smart or aware or modest and willing to learn and grow, they will know right away when their judgment is rooted in impairment, if that makes sense. I hope that answers your question. That was a fantastic question. Juby Joe says, my husband was a tailgater driver. If he needed to drive, I followed behind him in my vehicle. Usually I always drove us. Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. It's like, what is this? I don't like tailgaters. I think they are aggressive. And, they kind of tick that box on the inside of you that says, I want to fight back. I can't do it. I can't do it. All right, let me keep moving, guys, and then I'm going to go back to the content so we can wrap up. Nancy R., I'm so glad to hear that. That's awesome. So good to hear that this is helping. Gary Bennett, hello and welcome, my friend. It's good to see you. Gary Bennett says, foolish people have egos, which clouds their judgment. And if they live in a toxic environment, which encourages evil behavior, they will continue their actions as they have no concept of consequences. Gary Bennett, that is such a wise comment. Okay, we can go. I'll see you tomorrow. No, I'm kidding. That is awesome. That's just like summed up the entire live chat tonight. I love it. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. That is awesome. I very much agree. Yeah. The Good Glow says, I don't know about that. She's referring to when I was talking about police. Some cops target certain people and then refuse to check their ego. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think that can happen, the Good Glow, in any area. But for the purposes of this conversation, I'm just talking about the police officers that are not, they're nice, they're kind, they have a specific goal in mind, they need your license registration, and you need to comply. We're not talking about those police officers that shouldn't have a badge. You know what I mean? But we are talking about those who tend to be caring and understanding, and they just need you to follow the rules so everybody can go home. You're not permitted to speed and act insane on the road because now you're putting other people's lives in jeopardy. So yes, give me your license and registration, because you might have warrants, you might need a ticket, and you may not have an active driver's license or car insurance. So it makes sense to me. I'm sure it makes sense to you, the Good Glow. But yes, I very much agree with you on that. It just depends on the kind of police we're talking about. And so I'm talking about the good police, guys. Dawn One, hello and welcome. It's good to see you tonight. Welcome back. Let's keep moving. Socialite Polity, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for that. It's good to see you. Yeah, actually, Jovial, why are we speaking Spanish tonight? No me gusto. Los drogas. I said that wrong, didn't I? I feel like I said that wrong. No me gusto. I said that right. Why? Are you trying to challenge me tonight? Actually, Jovial, if you dropped me off in Spain, I would know literally maybe half the alphabet soup, and then the other half I would be having to ask for help because I just don't know. And my mother would be very dissatisfied. The one who put me in multiple Spanish classes growing up. Oh, all right, guys. Love you. You guys are awesome. Jeremy Robinson, hello and welcome. It's good to see you in tonight's live chat. Jeremy Robinson says, if my mom has diabetes due to unhealthy eating habits, could that be considered foolish behavior to try to get her children to take up her eating habits? I mean, most likely, yeah. Maybe she doesn't really know. Maybe she doesn't really know. Sorry, guys. Maybe she doesn't really know that this is foolish behavior, but she needs to be leading by example. You know, sometimes foolish behavior is, again, it's steeped in impaired judgment, and the actions of the person goes against their self-interest. So I guess we could say that that's part of it. Yeah, that's part of it. Ronald Zion, hello and welcome. It's good to see you tonight. Haven't seen you in a little while. It's good to see you. Mark Lee, hello and welcome. It's good to see you tonight. Oh, man, that's hot. Whew. Last week, it was 100 here in PA. Jeez Louise, it was 100. So 110? Oh, my God. Fairy girl. All right, one last comment before I go back to the content, because I'm going to give you some tips on how to deal with these people. Miss Janine, hello and welcome. So glad to have you in the chat always. Miss Janine says that boxed reality or ignorance is bliss is not good self-reflection. I definitely agree. This reminds me of many people from my past. Scary. Glad to be free from most fools. Yeah, absolutely. It is scary, right? Because a foolish personality or foolish character says, I don't see myself. I see everything else out there. And my decisions, my behavior, my actions, you know, my thinking process is devoid of wisdom. I don't have the ability to process, to scan things over, to pump the brakes, to be less impulsive, to use my executive functioning. I don't have the capacity to do that. That is a scary piece, right? Miss Janine said it too. She says it's scary. Okay, so how does psychology say that you can deal with this? If you were to Google this topic, you're going to find maybe a few tips, but they don't seem to be rooted in human behavior, knowledge on human behavior and development. Let me throw out here too that we have a history, and maybe I'll post it in the comments section when we sign off here. We have a history of having really intellectual thinkers. Aristotle, Isaac Newton, Francis Bacon. Those are individuals who were major intellectuals, smart and intelligent. But did they make foolish decisions? 100%. 100%. For those of you who are Christian-based, religious, you know that Solomon was the wisest man upon the earth, right? Wise. However, he did one foolish thing that took him down. He loved many women, as the scripture says. And so that became his folly. That became his downfall, you know? But Solomon is considered the wisest man that walked the earth. Aristotle and Isaac Newton are praised. They're also seen as wise. They're also seen as intelligent, but they have made very foolish decisions in history. So I will post that article that speaks of these different, these different thinkers and why they can be considered foolish because of some of the things that they did. So I'll post that. But what does research and psychology say about, dealing with these kind of individuals? The first thing, if you are dealing with a foolish individual and the conversation is absolutely going nowhere, or they're arguing with you, or they're trying to prove something, silence and resolve is wise. I had a session the other day with a client. She says to me, Tamara, I don't understand why I stay in this abusive relationship. She says, we've been in a relationship for 25 years. And yet every single Friday he beats me. Every single Saturday he cusses me out. She says, I don't know why I keep doing this. And why do I keep getting beat up? Why do I keep engaging him in conversation? Why do I keep going off and calling him names and triggering him and doing things that I shouldn't be doing, which causes the issue? We had to kind of tease all of that apart because there's a lot in those questions she was asking me. But I remember saying to her that a wise response to a foolish person, when you've got a foolish person in your world, raging and screaming and choking you and, being angry or hitting you or doing something that is not appropriate, your wise move is complete silence. Don't engage. Don't engage. Now, if there's physical domestic violence, then you definitely want to get out of there, right? Leave. There's no reason to stay in a situation like that. But if you are dealing with somebody who doesn't know when the argument is over, wants to argue every point that you make, wants to challenge you on every end, silence, resolve. Having a certain resolve that says, I am disengaged now, is the best way to go sometimes. Silence is wise if you use it the right way. Research in psychology also tells us to pause and to question what's going on. Pause and pump the brakes. Engage in mindfulness. What is happening right now? Why am I triggered right now? Why am I overwhelmed? Why do I feel uncomfortable with this person? Pausing and questioning. It's really at the core of things, mindfulness. Shift your energy away. Dealing with a foolish person who only wants to argue and fight, shift your attention away from them. Shift your energy away from them. They don't deserve any more of your energy, because what a fool does, or a foolish person, they latch on to you and they drag you, I'll put it that way, in the mud. And so in order to avoid that, if you perceive a foolish person who's engaging you in something that is irrational, then you want to shift your energy to somewhere else, and there's many different ways that you can do that. But right now, I'll probably explain that tomorrow. But for right now, I'm just going to say shift your energy. The other thing is be very clear. Make sure that they understand your boundaries and the rules of the relationship. I have to be very clear with you. When I'm seeing clients, I have to be very clear with my clients sometimes. Here's the goal for today's session. Let's go ahead and address A, B, and C. And then let's go ahead and wrap up and schedule you. If I don't set the course like that, then sometimes my clients, not now, but in the past, they'll hold you over time. They'll pull you into an argument. They'll pull you into a debate that's unnecessary. They just manipulate the time. So being very clear and concise with people like this is going to be wise and helpful. Focus on their strengths as well. If you're in a situation with a foolish person and you're not liking anything that you're seeing, just kind of focus on their strengths. What is the strength right now? Maybe talking up to the police officer is a little bit of a strength, because he's letting the officer know that I'm not going to receive a ticket when I was going the speed limit. And I'm going to fight this in court. So focus on their strengths. Sometimes there's strengths on the flip side of that foolish behavior that they tend to have. Reinforce their wise behavior. If you see something that they do that's wise, so let's say this is your mom or dad, and they've always been self-centered and narcissistic, reinforce some of the wise behavior that you see them engage in. Maybe you observe your dad apologizing to your brother or your sister, and he's not the one to apologize, but he's doing it today. Praise him. Dad, that's amazing. That touched my heart that you apologized to Joey. Thank you for doing that. Positively reinforce. Sometimes that can be really strong and powerful. Set boundaries. We know that. I'm working on it. You're working on it. We have to set boundaries with a person who engages in foolish actions, because remember, their behavior creates a likelihood that something is going to backfire and the consequences are going to be disastrous. So if that's the case, then we want to set those boundaries so that we're not in that bubble that can destroy us, if that makes sense. Ask questions for clarity. Sometimes you just need to keep asking questions for clarity. A foolish person throws some information out at you. You need to be able to question them. What's that mean? What do you mean by that? What's going on there? Why are you doing that? Why are you saying that? What brought you to this conclusion? Questions provide clarity. You want to set your expectations a little lower with a person who tends to engage in foolish behavior. If your expectation is that they become a wise, insightful, self-aware person, you might want to drop that down to they're going to stop some of the negative behavior in the next 12 months, or I'm going to try to get them into therapy. Drop your expectations of them. Research in psychology suggests that if you argue with a fool, if you argue with a foolish person, you're going to find that you're going to be stuck in circular reasoning, circular arguing. And if you don't know how to set that boundary, ask questions to clarify, and bring down your expectations of them just a little bit, you're going to be sorely disappointed. And a lot of my clients have been with their foolish family members. You don't want to internalize. You don't want to internalize their actions. So in other words, you don't want to try to engage the foolish person in something. Sorry, guys, my cord is tilting here. You don't want to engage. You don't want the foolish person to engage in certain behaviors and then you take them on as well. So I often believe in separating from a foolish person, building that healthy boundary between the two of you, even if it's family. And lastly, in this category, I just think it's powerful to lead by example. So if you have a foolish mother, a foolish father, a foolish sibling, and they continue to do the same foolish thing over and over again, it's almost like a character pathology. It's a piece of who they are. I think leading by example can be very, very helpful, even if you speak it out loud. The neighbor, Johnny, cut down my tree without asking me for permission. So you may be able to, in front of your foolish sister or brother who makes really rash decisions, maybe your brother or your sister is saying, let's go over there. Let's go over there and confront him. He doesn't have a right and he's all huffy and upset. You could lead by example by speaking out loud what your steps could be. And you could say something like, you know what, I'm wondering if we need to let it stay like it is for now because it's a Sunday. Monday morning, we call the police. We tell them that he was on our property. He trespassed. Let's just talk to the police. Let's let the police go over there and talk to him. And then from there, we'll file a police report. And if the neighbor is back on our property again, we'll have evidence that he continues to come back. Let's buy a camera and put it up, A, B, and C, right? Leading by example might entail verbalizing the wise and calm steps that you are going to take. I find that extraordinarily helpful when I do this with clients. If they come in and they have a foolish parent or they have a foolish spouse or a foolish sibling and they don't know what to do about a certain situation, then I will clearly and verbally walk them through what might be some healthy ways to deal with the situation. Tomorrow's live chat, guys, we're going to have just a little bit of a longer live chat. I do have to go tonight, which is why I kind of did things this way tonight. But you're going to want to come see me tomorrow. We're going to talk more about this, but we're going to bridge the gap between this conversation and the video that I recently posted. What was the video that I recently posted that it got a ton of views because I never can remember the videos I'm doing. Is that bad? It got a ton of views because a lot of people feel that this is something that they deal with on a regular basis. It's parasitic lifestyle. So the psychology of parasitic lifestyles in a toxic family. So we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow with some elements from this conversation. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go to the chat box, engage you just a little bit, and then I do have to go. Let me mention this also too, and I'm going to do a video on this next Tuesday. So you're going to want to make sure you have your notification bell clicked. But parasitic lifestyle with parents and siblings. So I'm going to break that up so you can see the differences between a parasitic lifestyle with a parental figure and a parasitic lifestyle with a sibling dynamic. So let me know in the chat box, the comment section, if you want me to focus on that, because I can do 2 different videos next week about those. It's really interesting to see how a parental parasitic lifestyle can really take you down and a sibling relationship that's a parasitic one. So you're going to want to see those, but just let me know if you want me to focus on those in the chat box, because I'll do 2 different videos next week. Karen, oh God, what did I do? Karen Griffith, hello and welcome. It's good to see you tonight and welcome to the channel. Karen says, common sense, is that common? I don't know. I don't know. That's a good one though. It makes you think. I'm like thinking, what could be a comeback to that? Actually, Jovial, are you talking about my endoscopy? If that's the case, let me know in the chat box. Let me know in the chat box. No, I didn't bump my head, if that's what you mean. Lorraine Huvis, I hope I said that correctly. Hello and welcome. It's glad to have you live tonight and glad to have you in the live chat. Lorraine says, Tamara, you are so smart and so right on every single topic. Thank you for your help. Oh, you're welcome. And thank you so much for that compliment. That's so, so sweet. And Angie Mo, hello and welcome. It's good to see you tonight. Ellie Wen, I'm going to put your comment up here so people can see it. Yeah, I totally get you. I get your frustration, Ellie Wen. I do. KB says they have this bias and they think it is good for everyone. They think they are the golden standard, but they are not. Yes, they do. They do. Their actions go against their self-interest. Their self-interest is if you want people to see you a certain way, act a certain way. That's not how they are. Oftentimes, like you said, they have this bias that they're wonderful and they're great and everybody should be like them. It almost feels a little narcissistic, you know? Sun Farrar says, you watch the fools with constant worry and concern. Fools will raise your blood pressure at all times. They don't see their train wreck. Exactly. I'm actually going to start Keith B's comment and Sun Farrar's comment. I very much agree with that. Karen Griffith says, that's why to protect yourself is to distance yourself. Sometimes you have to, 100%. Bree 420, good to see you. Welcome tonight. Bree says, oh, she's saying that 47 minutes late. And I'm so mad at myself. Don't be mad at yourself. I'm so glad to have you when you can come and be a part of the conversation. It's good to see you. Ronald Diane says, there's nothing worse than a gaslighting fool. Yeah, that's true. That didn't happen. You didn't see that right. Why would you think that? Nobody did that. What are you talking about? What's wrong with you? Yeah. It's a headache. And Pulsar says, my mom is this way, is unable to see that she engages in antisocial behaviors and it scares people. Yep. They don't see themselves. They can't. AMB says, my mother is a foolish person and she's brought so much danger into her children's lives, even as adults. My goodness. I'm so sorry to hear that. I agree, though, that sometimes the foolish parent can bring a lot of danger into the adult child and the child's life. It's scary, right? Because they have no boundaries. None. Lorraine Caves, I'm going to say until you correct me, says, my grandpa and mom are very controlling. My grandpa is getting worse as he ages. And my mom is getting angry and gets violent when she feels like she's disrespected. I think they are both narcs. Very well could be true. Keep in mind that a narcissist and a sociopath and a foolish person can all look to be the same thing. That's what's tricky about them. They all are similar. That is tricky, right? Mark Lee says, people go on vacation and all common sense goes out the window. I lived at high altitude, right? People would drink and it hit them much harder. The rescues we had to do. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Foolish behavior. I agree with that. The good glow. I'm going to put you up here. That is cute. Bree, thank you so much for gifting 5 more people on this live chat tonight with memberships. I love you. You are just so wonderful. And let me just highlight that we crossed another milestone, not 10.5 million views, but the other milestone was a growing community of people that are members instead of subscribers, which for me, you guys are all the same to me, but it's so good to have members too, because there's perks to you. There's perks to me. It's so awesome. Like coming at the end of the year, I'm going to be giving away gift cards for certain things. There's going to be more promotions and sponsorships on this channel. No, we're not going to become a walking commercial. I don't want that to ever happen. But there are some things like Kamigo that contact me and say, hey, can we partner? And so, yes, I want to give you a discount to get some Kamigo products. Yes, I want to give you a free membership to Starbucks to get a really healthy drink, you know? So thank you for creating memberships, making them easy for me to obtain. I'll put it that way, Bray, by you giving people memberships, by Fairy Girl doing it. Daryl Harris also did it one day. It's great. It allows all of us to benefit. So thank you so much for that. I just want you to know that. Give It a Think says, that's great, Tamara. Thank you for that. Daryl Harris says, great to be back. It's always good to see you back. Okay, we're going to wrap up here in just a little bit. Yes, Ellie Wynn. Isn't that wonderful? So wonderful, right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Nancy. I really appreciate you. That's so sweet. Yeah, me too. It says that the community, not just me, all of us on the channel are drawing other people in. And that is so very awesome, right? Because what it says to me is that there's other people out there who struggle with the same issues, but they cannot find the resource until they stumble upon this channel. And then they're like, oh my God, it's okay that my family is toxic. Yes, it is. Yeah. Thank you for that, The Good Glow. Yes, I love that encouragement. Thank you. All right, let's keep moving. Fairy Girl, thank you so much for those. I love that. Son of Sunflowers, thank you for that. Okay, let's keep moving. Danita J. Minor, hello and welcome. It's good to see you back. She says, I always take my own car, multiple reasons. I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. B, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Thank you for that. I'm just going to put it up on the screen. I like what Actually Jovial says here. Thank you, B. I like those questions. Actually, Jovial says, you know you're foolish when you can weigh it or hold yourself accountable. Yeah. There you go. Yep. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Brian B. It's good to see you, by the way. Welcome back. Okay. I just want to get a few more people before I go. Thank you so much, Nancy. That's so sweet. Thank you so much. I receive that and I apply it to my spirit. Thank you so much. That comment makes me feel loved. And so glad that I get to be here with you guys. You guys are wonderful. Not to beat a dead horse, for lack of a better term, but you need to know that I appreciate you just as much as you seem to appreciate me. So thank you. Okay. Bree, thank you for the super stickers. You're on fire tonight. Thank you so much. Awesome. It's good to see you. Welcome back. Glad to see you. Guys, let's pause. Ash Whitaker asks, let me try this again. Ash Shakur Whitaker, hello and welcome. It's really good to see you. Leslie A, it's good to see you as well. And I feel like I'm missing somebody. Let me do one more person. Love this. Live Life. You're my last one. Live Life says, do not answer a fool according to his folly. Yes. Right? My mom used to say that all the time. She would say, I think it's a scripture in Proverbs, right? Live Life. And, you know, it's the idea that a fool is going to do something that is sinful, that is backwards, that is wrong. Do not show them attention. Don't give them a platform. Don't give them any room to do the foolish action and behavior that they continually do. Yeah. My mom used to say all the time, the fool will despise you when you try to speak wisdom to them as well. They get angry with you when you try to show them what to do. So yes, I mean, we can go on and on and on, right? With this conversation. Guys, I love you so much. Thank you for being with me tonight in tonight's live chat. I hope this was a little bit illuminating. I know it can be really difficult to separate fools from narcissists, from sociopaths. Don't worry about the labels. Zone in on the behaviors, on the characters, on the way that they think and behave. That is most important, not the label that we give them. These people are detrimental. So stay tuned. Join me tomorrow. We'll continue this conversation, but we're going to add a little bit of tweaks to it. So hope to see you tomorrow. Good night, guys.